All right, here we go. Hey, Corner, I'm back. Kind of. I showed up for a little bit on the House of Wu 2 weeks ago, and I kind of fell into a depression over the summer and didn't had a lot to say and to think about, but nothing that I think is appropriate to share in the corner. And so I kind of just did a lot of journaling and talking with other people that are in my like not virtual space. And I wanted to contribute, but not a lot's been happening until recently that I wanted to contribute to in the corner. And then I also have a bunch of ideas, including this one, that I don't know if anybody really wants to talk about. Um, so we'll see. I'm gonna try and keep this video really short. And there's gonna be like some editing stuff because I've been wanting to edit a video again for a while. I did a couple like funny like hype video edits. Maybe I'll put like a clip or an example of it in here in just a moment.
This is a rebellion, isn't it?
Wait,
I rebel.
no lie. That is no lie. That is no lie. Oh my, oh my. That is no lie. Oh nah.
So I've been thinking about storytelling recently because I've been reading One Piece, and I started right at the end of the summer. I got into the card game through some friends, and it's been fun. And kind of these characters come up in the game that are really cool, and you hear glimpses of them. And long story short, I started reading from the beginning, and I'm really, really enjoying it. And I've not enjoyed reading comic books specifically, or manga, right? I'm just going to clump them all into the same group. We can call it sequential art if we really want to, in that medium. For a long time, I really haven't enjoyed it, and I was trying to think about why. And I had a conversation with Neil recently that I'll maybe try and bring up, but it's kind of relevant. I was thinking about finality, and I guess my takeaway is that I think that we need as people a finality and an end to the stories we really enjoy, because otherwise, if you run on for so long with a story, I think it loses any of its meaning and value. The characters do. Um, Western comic books are the biggest, I think, example of this being a problem. Um, Batman and Superman and others have been going on for ages now, almost 100 years, some of them. Superman is almost at 100 something years old in the next 20 years probably. Even less than that, right? The 30s. And so he's been around for a long time. Batman's been around for a long time. And I find in the medium that we keep telling the same stories over and over again. And I find that even the characters' objectives are impossible to achieve given the nature of the stories, but I think also nature of the publication. Long story short, or mouth vomit, kind of summarized, is Batman and Superman will never end, and there comes a point in your engagement with them, I think, at least in the world of the comics itself, that I think it becomes kind of worthless. I used to follow comics as a kid really closely in high school, starting in middle school. I didn't do manga as a kid. Some of it was sensibilities, and some of it was just being a contrarian. But I used to read Batman a lot, and I used to follow the world of comic books quite a bit. And I found after a certain point, one, it was almost impossible to get into because of the time, and it was like the woke versus anti-woke, and that was the whole thing, and hard to get into because of that. But I find now looking at kind of present titles and what's offered, it's kind of worthless. Like, oh man, Batman's not a billionaire anymore, but he will be soon enough. And oh boy, Spider-Man hasn't grown and changed in the last 25 years. Um, these comics are regressive. These stories are regressive. And it's ironic the best stories about these characters highlight this, you can call it the cyclical nature of these stories, or how they are this symbol first, but it's regressive. Batman cannot have uh, more than one Robin. He can't have more than just Alfred for a long time. If we change the status quo in any real meaningful way, it has to ultimately be torn back down to return to what has been familiar for the kind of cultural zeitgeist and common culture of the 20th century. And I think that these characters ultimately are losing, if not will lose, a lot of their relevance outside of just being American symbols of the 20th century because they can't grow and change and because the stories that they're found in are one, been locked out for kids, and that's a different story. But two, because there's no finality to it, because there will be no resolution to Batman's crusade, there will be no resolution to um, Spider-Man's power and responsibility, guilt-ridden trauma that he lives with. One Piece and manga, on the other hand, has an end. Naruto ended, and it took like what, almost 20 years to do that, but it's about this kid and he wants to become the ninja president, right? The Hokage. But he gets to be that. He got to be that. He achieved this goal of greatness. He achieved this goal that is inspirational and aspirational. It got fulfilled. In a way that Batman's goal of cleaning Gotham or making it safe for people to never like experience what he experienced again can't happen. One Piece is drawing upon the end of its end. It's in its like last probably era. I don't know when it ends. It'll probably be another 1 or 2 years, but that's gonna have a conclusion. And ideally, right, Luffy's gonna become king of the pirates, and the One Piece will be found. There will be an end to that story. These characters have grown and changed. Naruto goes from being like what 13, 14, starting like ninja middle school, high school to becoming a young adult and like ninja president. Like Boruto and all that's a different story, but that's the beginning to end. It ends and people remember that story and they remember it well. People track One Piece and have tracked it for decades. Like these people who started reading it as kids are still reading it today. My students who are, you know, the perfect age for that manga because that's their demographic are reading it and they don't read comic books. And the kids who do read comic books, I think just do it because it's a collector's thing, it's a culture thing, and it's not really that these stories are meaningful. I don't think they've ever told me anything about a worthwhile story from the comic books that they read. And anybody in the corner want come talk to me about comics sucking and dying of like this being like a 20th century like vestige, go for it. Please hit me up. But because I have a lot of thoughts about it. But I think part of it's the finality. These things can end. And I think that superhero stories kind of adapt really well, and we do a lot of adaptation for them. Obviously, because it makes money, blah, blah, blah. But I think at least, with Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, Batman can come to an end, and there is a conclusion to the story. And I think that, you know, um, what's another good example? Okay, most of these are designed also to be like these comics that have some sort of end, or inconclusive end, no finality to them. So, when I was reading Grant Morrison's Batman, probably last year, which I think is my favorite run on Batman comics, it's the stuff that I was reading in high school as it was not coming out, but in trades at the time. It ends in tragedy. It's really sad because Grant Morrison created a kind of a world for Batman that felt like it could have existed for forever, and it almost, in retrospect, feels like it had always been there, and in reality, it lasted for maybe a year. The first Robin became the new Batman, and Batman had a kid, Damian Wayne Robin. This is really for those who don't know what I'm talking about. And then he had this whole global group of people who had aspired to be like Batman, the International Club of Heroes, which many of them got grafted into what became Batman Incorporated. And it all ends in tragedy. And his son dies, and Batman Incorporated gets dissolved. And at the end of the day, Grant Morrison has to finish their story, and Batman has to become the Batman that the common culture, that the 20th century has known for forever, going into the 21st. And he has to just have Alfred and a Batmobile and like nobody with him. And somebody on Goodreads of all places, because when I'm bored at school, I'll just read Goodreads reviews for things, because it's not blocked on the school websites. But they had done like a three-part kind of review essay on Morrison's series, in each of the large omnibus that had come out recently, and just a description of this, and then says, which brings us to the Ouroboros, a symbol of Leviathan, which is a common theme. There's this group called Leviathan. The monster that is bigger than anything else and can never be beaten, and that's the nature of Bruce's status as an ongoing character. That any progress made in an individual storyline washes away with the next story. Any growth must end in tragedy, and it has to be his, Batman's, own doing on some level metatextually. A want for his mission to continue, because to stop would mean he would have to form real connections outside the context of the mission. And this is just sad. It's so sad. Um, and it sucks. And it's why I hate comics ultimately. Or not that I hate the medium, but I hate what they are because these characters are nothing more than icons ultimately, it feels like. And maybe I sound really pessimistic, but like on the other hand, like these characters have grown and changed in just in the last 150 chapters I've read, and they will continue to grow and change. And the manga that's coming out of the East that has already existed and will exist has a sense of finality to it in a way that I don't think Western comics ever will.